Hello, hello. All right. Hey, everyone. This is an unusual setting with a lot of noise. My name's Kent Halliburton. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SAS Mining. And before I get into the presentation here, I just want to give a shout out to Gary and all the staff that made this happen. Mel, say thank you. This event is just amazing. 10 years running now. My gosh, a massive step up from last year to be here. This is a very cool experience. And what I love about coming to these events, to Bitcoin conferences, and specifically this one, is everybody feels real that's here. And I don't find that in my life as much when I'm wandering around typical society. So shout out to you guys for being real ones. Thank you. So I am going to talk today about why Bitcoiners must mine, not should mine or could mine, but need to mine. And the reason for this is various, and I will get into it. But the first thing that I want to do is explain a few terms, because we don't have consensus on all the language that we use. So the first thing that I want to discuss, this is an idea first, and I'm going to define a couple words. But one of the ideas that I want to touch on is that Bitcoin is actually two different 0 to 1 innovations. And this isn't discussed much in our community. But in the same way that a single coin has both a heads and a tails, Bitcoin has something similar. Now, the heads of Bitcoin is the decentralized ledger. This allows us to send value anywhere around the planet at a moment's notice, right? And probably greatest example of this and greatest marketing for the decentralized ledger, I would argue, on the planet has been this last week with the Straits of Hormuz in Iran, right? That is Bitcoin for enemies, quite literally, from a U.S. perspective, right? The fact that Iran is taking Bitcoin payments, and it can't be censored. The second innovation and the head or the tail side of this same coin is the decentralized money printer that we call Bitcoin mining, right? In the very same way that is uncensorable to send value around the world, it is uncensorable to stop you from printing your own money as long as you have A, the right hardware, B, electricity, and C, an internet connection. You can print your own money. And that is the first time in 5,000 years that we've had a decentralized money printer. That's pretty phenomenal when you think about it. So the first term I want to define is, what is a Bitcoiner? A lot of people have a lot of definitions for this. I'm going to use this definition throughout the presentation, and it looks like it got cut off a little bit. But the definition I like to use is, a Bitcoiner is somebody who chooses to save Bitcoin instead of fiat for a better future. Why do we save, though? We save because it is a biological imperative, I would argue, and it enables our lives to flourish. Now, I am a 12-year-long expat at this point. I'm U.S. citizen, Portuguese citizen, and a Peruvian resident. I live in Peru right now. I've lived outside of the U.S., traveled extensively, and I have noticed over and over again, no matter where you are, people save for the same reasons. And these reasons come down to, first, housing, right? Biologically, we need a place to shelter us from the elements. And so we save to be able to have housing, move out from our parents, and be able to establish ourselves. The second thing we save for is education. Whether it's for ourselves or for our children, we need to have some form of savings to be able to educate ourselves or our children, so that then we can go out and generate economic value and be able to continue to propagate as a species, really. If you can't generate value for others, you're not going to make it. The third one is marriage. So I'm going to use the very traditional sense of this when I say it, but largely and historically over time, a marriage celebration cost money, and savings needed to be deployed to be able to celebrate the union of a man and a woman to generate more, or to produce children, to continue the species going, right? So that involves savings. Then when you get to the end of your life, God willing, you've had a great life, you've got children, grandchildren, you don't want to be dependent on them, right? So you need savings to fund your retirement. The last one is kind of the first rung of the ladder, and I put it last because it's the least consequential, but most of us figure out pretty quickly, I better have a bit of savings to deal with a speed bump in life to cover, a few months if something bad comes up. I break my arm, I can't go work, whatever. But saving in Bitcoin does something fundamentally different for us. And I like to call it hard savings. Just like we have hard money, this is hard savings. And if you think about it, if your savings is kind of a foundation for you to build a life on, when you're saving in fiat, what you're doing is you're standing on a moving foundation, right? And this is what creates the hamster wheel effect that we all feel so much when we're trying to stay ahead. But when you save in Bitcoin, you suddenly have a hard foundation to stand on, and something happens, and you can see it within the Bitcoin community. This happens, but people begin to face forward, and I'm speaking metaphorically in time. They begin to face forward and have hope for the future. And this is a really important transition that people go through, and I see it within the community. People all kind of come to the same spot and see the world the same way, and it's because as you face forward, your time horizons begin to extend. And there's a very weird thing that most of us don't talk about much, but most of us believe, that I've talked to in this room or know personally, that we are more than our five senses. I'm just going to call that a higher aspect of ourselves, but that higher aspect is timeless. And when we start to have an extended time horizon, we're aligning with our higher selves. And guess what? Just naturally, that means we're starting to think intergenerationally. We're starting to care about protecting the future. So our hard savings actually fundamentally changes us. So it's super important that we have it.
BitBlockBoom started because we were outsiders and we needed a place that felt like home. Stockyards were always a place for people who didn't fit in. Let's go take a look at the cow town. Put on your hat. Let's go. Stockyards weren't just a cattle town. It was a place for cattlemen, traders, outlaws, and gamblers, people that were building something new. And that sounded familiar. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were known to spend time here, and Bonnie and Clyde stayed right here at the Stockyard Hotel. Hotels were great, but they're too normal, and Bitcoin is anything but normal. So we moved BitBlockBoom to a place with some edge and some history. They still run Longhorn Steer down this street every day, just like they did 100 years ago. And BitBlockBoom, well, it's just a few steps away. This is Mule Alley. This is where relationships are made. Bars, restaurants, rodeos, hangouts. Mule Alley is the place to come when the BitBlockBoom day is done. BitBlockBoom was built for people who didn't have a home, and the same thing applies to the stockyards. Seems like we finally found a home. See you at the stockyards.
Now I'm going to totally divert the conversation now that I've defined a couple terms that I think are important, and talk about how we've gotten our Bitcoin, right? So, okay, we're Bitcoiners. We're saving in Bitcoin. We're firming up our future, and we're starting to care about next generations. How have we gotten our Bitcoin over time? This is an unexplored area of our history that I think is super important and relevant today. So if you talk to an OG Bitcoiner from the circa 2009 to 2012 era, what you'll find is almost all of them got their Bitcoin through mining it. And they have a fondness for mining as a result. How did that happen? Well, if you're running the Bitcoin node software at this point, there's a simple toggle to turn your GPU into a mining operation and generate Bitcoin. And almost everybody did at this point in time. That changed for two different reasons. And when that change happened, I would argue our timeline split. So what happened? First, the ASIC came out. Once the ASIC came out, now it was much more complicated to mine your own Bitcoin to stay competitive. It just became uncompetitive trying to do it on your computer. The second reason is Coinbase opened their doors, and for the first time, it was easy to buy your Bitcoin instead of just mine it. So the timeline split right there. And in 2013 on, most people have gotten their Bitcoin by buying it instead of mining it. And that's had unintended consequences. The first of these is that it's divided the two communities. And I say this quite simply because if you go to a mining specific conference, you will find very few Bitcoiners there. Now, this particular conference is an exception because we're in Texas, but if you go to most Bitcoin conferences outside of Texas, to caveat it, you will find very few miners. It's because the people that buy their Bitcoin are a different set of people than the people that mine their Bitcoin. And this has actually, in my opinion, created a bit of amnesia between the buying community. It's created in some ways, mining is kind of this mystical, oh, some other guy does that. And we've othered mining within the mining community, within the greater Bitcoin community. And frankly, that has led to some mining centralization, which I will touch on in a future slide here. But I do want to explore beyond convenience why this actually happened. So one of the reasons is the mining community itself. We failed as a mining community to deliver a convenient way to compete with the exchanges to acquire your Bitcoin through mining. We've instead, most of the community either decided to go get their Bitcoin just for themselves. No problem. We're self-interested creatures, right? And those that did try to make it easy, unfortunately, betrayed the trust of the market over and over again. So the third reason, though, is supply and demand. It is not the same if you want to buy Bitcoin in bulk than if you mine Bitcoin and get incrementally more Bitcoin over time. They're just two fundamentally different things. So if you are into speed and getting a bunch of Bitcoin, go buy it, right? So different experience. Finally, the last one is exchange-based competition. The exchanges make their money on taking a cut of fiat to Bitcoin and vice versa, right? They have no incentive to drive people into mining because that's cutting into the revenue stream. So there's fundamentally competition between miners and exchanges as a result. Not talked about, but I do believe it's there. So let's talk mining centralization for a second. And I want to start with the scrambled numbers on the right that didn't translate very, very well. So 49% of hash rate is in two pools right now, Foundry and Ant Pool, right? There's two throats that need to be choked before a transaction could be censored. That's it. Only two. And while I don't think it's likely that it will happen, the fact that it could happen presents a risk to the network. Why? Because if it were to occur, it would shake people's belief in the uncensorable nature of the network. So we've got a Lindy effect of trust that we've built up over 17 years now. If a transaction gets censored, people would question that. Also, more than 50% of all the mining rigs that are being produced right now are being produced by a single manufacturer named Bitmain. Bitmain also happens to own Ant Pool, right? So we've got this massive supply chain risk that's going on. And to be fair, these numbers have gotten better. It was worse last time I gave this presentation. So there's solutions on the horizon, but one of the fundamental reasons why this has occurred is because we have entities on the network, and I'm going to pick on the pubcos here just for a minute, the publicly traded mining companies. When I say this, they've got a fiduciary responsibility to return dollars, not Bitcoin, to their shareholders. As a result, they are fundamentally using Bitcoin as a stepping stone to acquire. That means they are on the network hashing to ultimately acquire fiat, and I call them fiat hashers. And the publicly traded Bitcoin miners are not the only ones that are doing this. There's most of, I would challenge everybody to go to a mining specific conference, and you will find most people there are there to get dollars, not Bitcoin. So in a lot of different ways, the Bitcoin community has seeded the network, I would argue, to fiat hashers. And they don't always align with the interests of the Bitcoin network long term. In fact, that's why you see many of the pubcos are starting to pivot, right? The profitability for mining has gone lower than the profitability for doing AI HPC compute. They have a fiduciary responsibility for dollars. Makes sense that they're pivoting. That presents a great opportunity for us as a community, by the way. So now that I've laid out the problems, let's talk solution. Now, I'm not going to just drain us of all our hope here because it's not a hopeless situation in the least, but there's a strong economic argument. I'm going to make the moral case a bit more succinct here in a minute. And there's a strategic reason why all of us should be mining. On the economic one, I would relabel as the energy cost to mine a Bitcoin with SAS mining to be a little bit more clear here. But this is the fundamental value proposition of mining. And in my anecdotal conversations with individual Bitcoiners, I find that very few Bitcoiners understand just this basic. And this basic thing is, how much Bitcoin do I get for the electricity that I spend? Now, I will be very clear here. I am not including the mining hardware when I say this, right? but this is just stripping it away on a month-to-month basis. This is the equivalent of I put money on an exchange and I consistently get some Bitcoin with it, a DCA strategy, right? So instead, let's talk about energy cost averaging. So right now, you can get through us, and you can go find others that have similar value propositions. You can get through us for $142 per month, 325,000 sats. Simple division yields $43,000 per Bitcoin that you're stacking with that. So you are saving dollars and getting more sats through a mining effort. Now, there is a very weird thing that broke my head for a long time, might be breaking yours, but Bitcoin mining is the only way to make Bitcoin. Let me say that again because it's super simple, but fundamentally paradigm breaking. Bitcoin mining is the only way to make Bitcoin. Now, why is that important? It's important because it breaks the ROI-driven calculation that we've been trained to think in when we think of an investment. Because in an ROI calculation, you're thinking, I put dollars in, I get dollars out. Makes sense. Think ROI. No problem. This breaks that because you're putting dollars in and you're getting Bitcoin out. So how should you think about that? Well, you should think, am I getting my sats at a cheaper price than if I go buy them? That's how you should think about it. So when we talk about Bitcoin mining, to me, every time I hear people bring up the ROI, I sit there and yes, you should when it comes to the hardware. You should think in those terms and you should get into that. But when you think about what you're getting on a day in, day out basis, no, you want to make sure you're getting cheaper sats. That's the argument to mine. You're getting it at cost. And oh, by the way, they're also wild. They're generated outside of the banking surveillance system. So you're getting sats directly off the network, which means most of our clients, they actually feel more at ease to spend their sats, right? So I would argue that helps to prime the pump of the circular economy. So the very last economic reason is, hey, guess what? If you're getting more sats for your dollar, well, you're stacking yourself out of fiat dependency sooner, which I would argue is pretty much the game that all of us are playing, right? We all want to get out from underneath the thumb of fiat. And to do that, we're trying to acquire as much Bitcoin as we can. So if you get more for your dollar, you're getting there quicker. On the moral case, there is nobody that has more skin in the game than a Bitcoiner mining, straight up. So as we have more Bitcoiners mining, our social layer helps to protect the network better. And the network becomes less reliant on the corporate quarterly profits, right? I worked and drove sales and revenue for a publicly traded solar company for several years of my life. And I will say, as an executive in that industry, I was thinking quarter to quarter, not further ahead. I promise you that is not in alignment right now, the pubcos with their decision makings at the board level with what the needs of the network are for the long term. But all of us having Bitcoin miners and participating in the network also means that the network itself becomes more decentralized. There's more throats to choke. It becomes harder for any one entity to aggregate us all together and to actually harm the security of the network. And I think this is probably the thing that gets me the most, but our community becomes more unified. Being a miner, it has been clear that there's been an othering between the Bitcoiner community and the mining community, and I don't think that's healthy for the long term. And you can specifically see this in the last year with the Core 30 debate, if you know that. So alignment does matter. Now, the strategic case, this is the most interesting to me personally and the most controversial. But I believe that our psychology is driven right now and we're being governed as a community by Gresham's Law. What is Gresham's Law? Gresham's Law is the idea that we hoard the good money and bad. So go clear back to Roman times for a second with me here. The denarii was the coin that was minted. It was silver. And the Roman Empire grew off of the back of the denarii, but at a certain point, they started to debase it and clip the coins. Guess what happened? The merchants in the street, they realized, hey, this one's a little heavier than this one. I'm going to chuck that in my cupboard, and I'm going to go spend the bad one because it's got the same purchasing power. That's how Gresham's Law formed, and that drives all of our behavior because right now, we all know Bitcoin is good money. Well, guess what? I don't want to spend my good money. I want to spend my bad money. And you can feel it every time you go to spend your Bitcoin. There's a little friction point. We all know we should. We've been moralized by many Bitcoiners about how we need to pump the circular economy, but all of us feel a little friction every time we go to spend our Bitcoin. That's Gresham's law in action. And guess what? That hoarding behavior doesn't change, in my opinion, until there's no more liquidity. And when does that change? As soon as that $110 trillion worth of global M2, which is 208 times the existing value of Bitcoin on exchanges right now, sucks it all up. It does not take much more than a blip for 2.2 million Bitcoin that's currently on exchanges to disappear. And guess what? When that happens, the buy phase is over. Here comes the earn phase of Bitcoin adoption. And if you're in mining now, guess what? You've just jumped on the on-ramp of how most people will want to acquire their Bitcoin in the future. So you get a head start. This is this image has a big impact to me because of what it represents, and I don't mean represents it as far as like, hey, this is a cathedral, but represents from an idea level. This is a picture of the Milan Cathedral. I don't know if any of you guys know the backstory of the Milan Cathedral, but this cathedral took 589 years to build. Can you imagine in this day and age that we would set out on a project that we would not finish until roughly 2,700? Hell no. That's Bitcoin, folks. That is what we're building. So if we are going to actually make it and have this intergenerational, we're planting the seeds of the tree that our grandkids are going to be under, we have to actually care for it, which means we actually have to mine and have control of the network as a community. And I'm not saying that from a top-down governance. It's got to be a consensual thing, but it's a responsibility that we have to future generations. So I don't care how you mine. Genuinely, just get started mining. Stop buying. Or at least diversify how you're getting your Bitcoins. Go 50% DCA, go 50% mining, but run a BitAxe, run a heater, a Bitcoin hashing heater. Go to a traditional hosting provider. If you want to talk to us, we think we've got a pretty slick model, but we built a software as a service platform. We don't make money selling you hardware. We don't make money selling you electricity. What we do is out the back end, when the mining pool distributes a Bitcoin, we keep just 15%, which means that if we can't make you Bitcoin, we don't get paid. So we aligned our incentives as good Bitcoiners, and have made it easy. Our goal and mission really is to be the primary on-ramp for when the buy phase is over. And we were inspired, or I personally was inspired. That didn't work. Maybe it won't. There we go. I personally was inspired after reading Jeff Booth's The Price of Tomorrow in circa 2020. Bitcoin is hope. It's the bridge to the future. And I'm going to augment this by saying we have to secure our bridge to the future. There is nobody else outside of this community to do that securing of our future. So please plug in, turn on your mining rig, and stack yourselves out of fiat. Thanks so much. Let me see if I have some question time. Gary, do I have time for questions? I have time for questions. I will take at least one. 6 minutes. 6 minutes. We got 6 minutes, folks. Hold on. Let me get my headphones on. Go.
Do you allow the user to select their own mining pool?
We offer a choice. So because we only make money through the payout from the mining pool, we have an API-based connection. Can you hear me? So because I'm giving a more expansive explanation, so we have a choice between Luxor, an FPPS pool, and Ocean. We don't collect any identifying information, but we have to control what pools we operate because of the revenue share model that we conduct. Okay. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a useful pair of choices.
We thought so too. We're trying to curate and make good options for customers.
All right, I got a tough one for you.
Give it to me.
Is that on?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, if it's $142 a month, that's $1,700 a year. If I do that and I'm trying to equate it out to a $42,000 payout, how are you calculating that? Because I'm saying that's only when Bitcoin therefore reaches $1.7 million. But I'm curious on your math. How do you get to that $42,000?
I take $142 and then I divide it by 0.000325. That's $142 divided by 335,000 sats.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Yeah. That's it. It's literally it's division, it's dollars in, how much Bitcoin you get. It's ugly math because nobody likes division. It's the most confusing of all the simple math operators, but it's math. Yeah, go, sir. We got time. Hit me.
So you said that the sats that come out of the mining, right, is clean or whatever. I'm not sure where you're going with that, but what kind of KYC do you need to provide as, like me, like a customer, if I wanted to get into that?
We tried to just use email addresses, but then I couldn't contact my customers. So then we required a phone number. And I have multiple Nunya businesses for customers, if that helps. Did you? I don't know if you, did I have the map? Okay, good.
Two questions. When do you anticipate the buying phase will be over, and how would you deal with the next subsequent halvings?
Oof, buy phase is over. Boy, that's a multi-trillion-dollar question. I think it's tied to the fourth turning and a lot of things. And if I were gun to head, I would say probably in the next few years, just because I think we're going through a fundamental phase shift as a civilization right now with the fourth turning. That said, I'm not going to stake a claim on that either. Like, it's going to happen at some point. At some point, the exchanges will be drained, just in the same way that every ounce of quality real estate gets locked up too. I think humans just have a natural hoarding behavior for scarce goods.
What's the jurisdictional risk in Paraguay for miners?
So I'm going to say the simple answer is very low. The more robust answer is they just started mining with us.
What about Ethiopia?
That's a bigger question. So I would argue that they are probably 2 to 3 years behind where Paraguay is in their adoption. But what I've seen with emerging jurisdictions is that there's an education phase of hard knocks that a government goes through with Bitcoin mining. So the first they say, oh, I can sell a lot of power contracts to these people and they'll give me a lot of money. And then the next phase is, oh, they're using a lot of electricity and that's causing me problems. Oh, I'm going to start to charge you guys more. And then the mining community barks and says, if you do that, we will leave. And then the governments don't believe that that'll happen. And so they go through with it. And then a bunch of the community leaves and they make less money. And then the government says, oh, I better listen to them. And then the next time they try to raise it, they say, well, no, we're gonna kill the golden goose. Let's just all enjoy the golden egg.
How long does the energy contract last in Paraguay before you have to worry about raising electricity rates?
It's a good question. There's actually on the table right now, as my understanding is, not this January, but next January, a rate decrease planned.
No way.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Got time for one more if anybody's got any other questions. If you don't, that's cool too. Yeah, go.
Hello, Brent, right? Yeah.
Kent.
Kent, sorry.
You're good.
Nice to meet you. Why not offer more like pool options for your users to choose give them options for there to choose which pool they launch?
What pool do you represent?
Like IPPI's pool.
No, I was teasing when I said that, but are you part of a pool?
Yeah, I am, but
Okay.
I'm not showing up which pool I am. But I just say like other company, because your users have been asked us why size only have few options. I don't know how to answer the questions.
Yeah, the answer is because, we would integrate more pools if we had more resources, and we're focused on other priorities because we've got limited resources. And pool integration for us is not the same because of revenue share, right? If I did not take a revenue share, it would be trivial for to say, hey, yeah, just put in a different IP address. But for me, my revenue comes directly out of the mining pool. That is how I'm paid. So if I don't set up that integration and get it all set up properly, then I'm jeopardizing the health of the business and therefore the mining operation for other clients.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you. Keep being real.